We got somebody on the line here from Southwest New Jersey. Who's from New Jersey?
Oh, that would be Derrick J calling from Philadelphia. How you doing, guys?
Hey, Derrick.
Oh, Derrick. Well, you're just in time for calling into the show here. He is an activist and member of the Free State Project. He's originally from Philadelphia, but he now currently lives actually in New Hampshire, as a matter of fact.
And he just made a terrific documentary.
And he's not in New Hampshire. He's on a self-imposed exile, so he's going to have to tell us where he is right now.
That's right.
I'm in an underground lair in Philadelphia. In truth, I am a little bit early calling in. I was pretty enthralled by your conversation talking about being against the death penalty because of the state intervention aspect of it. I didn't mean to derail that because I think it's pretty fascinating.
No.
Derrick, I'm looking forward to praising your documentary later in this show.
Good. Well, we'll have time for that, but I did want to throw in my 2 cents that I totally agree with you there, that any state intervention is just totally inappropriate, and it's counterproductive to a peaceful society. I would think that any conflict between individuals should be resolved privately.
Hey, may I make a modest proposal here? I propose that whenever you have somebody like this James Holmes, we basically have all of our 13-year-olds start playing video games, the object of which is to kill the guy. So in other words, we basically have millions of teenagers virtually killing this guy every week. I think that would be an appropriate punishment.
Oh, gosh. I just want to see a more peaceful world. I heard, I'm not sure who made the point earlier, but it was excellent. That a more armed society is a more polite society, that, if people were able to defend themselves and it was encouraged to know how to use a gun and to carry one, then that James Holmes guy, we wouldn't even be talking about this. He would have gotten one shot off and then he would have been killed.
Right, and then none of us would know his name, and that would be fine. But if we're going to celebrate, assholes like this, then instead of having the real violence of the state taking care of it, let's just humiliate his name. There was actually a I don't know whether it was a custom or an actual law passed after the American Revolution that you could not actually honor anybody with the name Benedict Arnold. And it turned out that in Benedict Arnold's family there were an awful lot of people named Benedict Arnold, and so it created sort of a problem. Right.
I want to table this part of the discussion on the entire shooting just for about a half hour or so, because I want to discuss Derrick. The real reason we're having him here is because, number one, he just released an awesome documentary called Derrick J. Freedom's Victimless Crime Spree. And I just got done watching this, Derrick. I heard how you got involved in the Liberty Movement. You were originally a Greenpeace supporter and also a fundraiser for the American Civil Liberties Union. And what I found particularly interesting was that you were in Philadelphia. You called into FTL. And you just basically told Ian and Mark that, I just moved to New Hampshire about a week ago, and then you got involved with the activists there. You were documenting and filming everything that was going on. What was that experience like for you? And did you regret one shitload of moments over that?
Well, there is plenty to regret about, what things that I've done, but at least they're entertaining, and at least they were documented on film so that other people can enjoy the mistakes that I made. But yes, you set it up beautifully there, Todd. I was an activist in Philadelphia. I was working for Greenpeace, and then I worked for the American Civil Liberties Union as a fundraiser on the street. And so I'm used to engaging with everyday folks about everyday issues about which they care. And I was not satisfied with what was going on, at least the level of participation that people were having in the system, I guess you could call it.
Right.
And the way that liberty seems to be dying everywhere I turn, it was, I was reading a newspaper article about some infringement on freedom, and Philadelphia is pretty notorious for, first of all, having, the beacon of freedom, the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, all of these wonderful, freedom concepts. But then also we've got shows like Parking Wars that are coming out on A&E that highlights the abuses of the parking authority. And PA is a state that has over 2,000 authorities. They're just corporations that the government just invents and gives monopoly privilege to. So I really had to get out of here. Being a freedom-loving person, it's suicide to stick around a place like this, and it's soul-crushing. So I heard about the Free State Project, which some of your listeners must know about, a movement of 20,000 liberty-minded individuals moving to New Hampshire to get active for the cause of liberty. And I had to be a part of it.
Derrick, out of that 20,000, how many have moved to Keene already?
Well, they're not all going to Keene, because I'm a good example. We're all over the state of New Hampshire.
Yes, there are people all over New Hampshire. Keene is actually one of the smaller locations, only has a handful of activists compared to some of the other places in this state like Manchester.
The reason I ask is, in watching your documentary, it's clear to me that the authorities in Keene are no more advancing toward libertarianism than Philadelphia or Chicago or New York.
Right.
Well, yeah, Keene is known for its hardcore civil disobedience activism, and it's also known for producing a lot of liberty media. So while we may have small numbers, we've got we've got powerhouses of media production there.
Yeah, but I mean, I was getting the feeling more than anything else that you were like that guy in Tiananmen Square standing in front of the tank.
Well, yeah, sometimes it felt like that because the police, they did ask for a Bearcat, which is one of these popular tanks being purchased all over the country by a generous grant from the Department of Homeland Security. And what it is essentially a tank. And folks can read more about that process at thanksbutnotanks.com, a free agents campaign that some of the activists in Keene launched to denounce the purchase of the vehicle.
Right.
And by the way, you know that Monday night we're scheduling a drone strike on Mars.
You're going to be on Mars?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the internet's just crazy these days. You can do anything now.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that really I thought what really stood out for me because of you, Derrick, because I've heard you on FTL lots of times. You provided some great commentary on that show, and you have, because you're very much an openly gay man in the liberty movement, and which is really awesome. We need more people of our caliber. Somebody like me who's already openly bi, and I'm not afraid to brag about it. But anyway, we've got this whole thing with a lot of people in the movement who really are so willing to help a lot of other people who are open to the ideas of freedom. And unlike the left and the right, I mean, I think the left and the right have pretty much screwed over, a lot of the people in this country when it comes to freedom overall. You've got the right. You've got the right, like the Obama supporters, who are basically concerned about civil liberties. The drug war, particularly legalizing marijuana, and they've been thrown under the bus. You've got people on the right who are saying, well, we need to do something about the economy. Also been thrown under the bus because what do Republicans like to do? They love to subsidize the shit out of big business and give it to the banks, but as much as the left does. And, this is the thing where we guys come down hard on being against corporate welfare, being against, the entire establishment from the inside out, and tell these people that we're not going to take it anymore.
Right. Living under the principle of self-ownership is what it seems to really be about. And you bring up some great examples. I mean, the left has been screwed, the right has been screwed, and I think it's a really positive thing, not that they're being screwed, but that it's becoming so obvious now. I mean, with the internet and all the media that's being produced independently, I think they have good intentions and they want social justice, but they don't realize until possibly it's too late that the only way the state can do it is through coercive violence.
Hey, Derek, is there some way we can get this across without guys like you having to be threatened with prison?
Yeah, there are plenty of ways to do it, and you're doing that. By producing this radio show is one way to do that, and I think this is great.
Right. I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if you ever heard of Abby Hoffman, who was one of the biggest anti-war activists of the 60s.
Todd, some people say I'm the new Abby Hoffman of New Hampshire, so it's ironic you say
Hoffman,
that.
one of the Chicago 7.
Yeah.
Right, Abby Hoffman of the Chicago 7. And I can tell you right now, I guess if you're Abby Hoffman, that makes me Lenny Bruce. But this is the thing. I think that, the freedom movement has been doing such a great job in Keene, particularly in Keene. Some of it, I think that you guys could do a lot better work on and whatnot. But, I'll tell you one thing. You guys have basically, when push comes to shove, you brought out a lot of attention to the people in this country who are sick and tired of the political machine. People who have been playing by the rules end up getting screwed over because they can actually just toss the rules out when it's convenient for them, but they expect you to play by the rules that they're not playing by.
Could I give a little history here to praise Derek? Derek, you're operating in the tradition of Henry David Thoreau, and there's a famous story that Henry David Thoreau basically refused to pay some taxes. He was thrown in jail, and Ralph Waldo Emerson came to visit him and said, "Henry, what are you doing in jail?" And Thoreau said to Emerson, he said, "What are you doing not in jail?" Now,
exactly.
It's a great question. So, in other words, the tradition of nonviolent resistance, which you were demonstrating in your documentary, is a great tradition which goes back to Thoreau, but it was picked up on by Gandhi. It was picked up on by Martin Luther King Jr. And so there's a grand tradition, and you have Martin Sheen, who manages to get himself arrested every 5 minutes, because there's a grand tradition of basically putting your body in front of the machinery of the state, this leviathan monster, to try to slow it down. I think that is a very morally commendable strategy. However, it has the downside that you're putting your body in front of the state and you get yourself often enough ground up. I don't enjoy seeing your documentary where you're being arrested and manhandled and mangled and dragged and thrown into jail. It's not enjoyable to me to see somebody who I admire being treated this way. And so that's the reason why Samuel Edward Konkin III and I started thinking about the strategy of agorism, of counter-economics, which is, instead of confronting the state and making oneself a target, is getting out of their line of sight, getting everybody else out of their line of sight, and building marketplaces which can capitalize themselves and build and grow and replace the state rather than basically confront it.
Well, and Jane, I have to tell you that one of the things we've done here in New Hampshire is we have people like Derek who are doing the civil disobedience. We have people who are practicing agorism. We have people like me who are practicing politics. That's the beautiful thing about the over 1,000 people who've already moved to New Hampshire is we're doing some of everything. And that combination that synergy is turning out to be very, very powerful.
Oh, I'm glad. I happen to live in a part of the country where we actually have that going also. I live in Pahrump, Nevada, and Pahrump, Nevada is famous. Nye County, Nevada is famous for being a center of support for the Ron Paul campaign, which is the infiltration of libertarianism into the Republicans, until, of course, you get to Tampa where the Republicans take over again.
Right.
Well, it does raise a lot of questions about, what's the best strategy to achieve freedom in our lifetime. And it seems like the callers, at least in this show, correct me if I'm wrong, but would agree that all strategies are the best strategy, that we should all be doing what works for us in order to advance freedom. And so,
I know, but you see, I'm enough of an Ayn Rand fan to not want you to have to be altruistic and put your body in between me and the state to save me. I'd like you to get out of the way and not be in danger.
Right, well, but how do you know I don't enjoy it? How do you know I don't find great satisfaction?
Well, I mean, different strokes for different folks. What can I say,
Well, and if you watch his video, you can tell he is enjoying the confrontations at times. I think it's very clear.
Yeah, but, it's a lot like playing Russian roulette. The empty chambers are a lot of fun, but when you hit that loaded chamber,
You know something, but you want to know something, Neil? I mean, let's be realistic here. I think that sometimes you have to stand up to a lot of the bullshit that is percolating throughout this entire system, throughout this entire country itself, because a lot of times people just acquiesce to way too much when it comes to the rules. They keep playing by the rules. They keep playing into the political system, thinking that somehow it's going to change. And not that I'm trying to diminish what Seth is doing, but I think what happens is that too many people think, well, only politics is the be-all and end-all. And let's face it, there's polarization and identity politics, and not to mention negativity ads thrown into the mix when we're dealing in campaigning.
Well, look, we have an historical choice to make here, okay? I mean, the phrase "in the closet" when it comes to gays is considered derogatory, okay? It's considered like there's something wrong with it. But the counter-economic strategy, if you think about it, means that everybody goes, if you will, into the closet, for self-protection. That means that marijuana smokers go into the closet. People who want to trade in gold instead of fiat money are going into the closet. And what we do is basically create a big fucking closet.
Well, but I think the thing that we're doing here in New Hampshire is we have people who are practicing that, but we at the same time have people who are doing outreach, not only encouraging people to do that, but doing it openly and saying you too should be practicing counter-economics. So we're not just going into the closet. We're trying to pull people in there with us and promoting it.
Yeah.
I want the libertarian closet to be the size of Carrie Bradshaw's closet.
I love the idea of counter-economics, guys, and what you talk about doing business without state permission is really exciting to me. One thing that I really enjoy is when people can be shown how it's done, so that they don't think that it's just a bunch of weirdos in some closet somewhere, doing some dirty deals, but that there's nothing wrong with voluntary interactions between individuals. And so when they do these things out in the open, it can be really convincing and encourage more people to get on board. So, I like to see when people have the courage to engage in open, voluntary business trade, out in the open.
I think there's courage. I think there's courage involved, even in doing it secretly. In other words, in building networks of people. Look, the concept of privacy is one which needs to be defended here. Okay, and if you're doing something in private, it doesn't mean you're doing it available for all to watch. In other words, the idea of libertarianism is to expand the sphere of privacy so that we can do those things which we want to do without necessarily Mrs. Grundy knowing about it.
I absolutely agree with you, but I want to point something out. When you do it privately and people don't realize how many other people are out there doing it, there's a fear factor that they would be alone. And the only way you counteract that fear factor is to make it clear how many people are doing it. And the funny thing is that this is not just a libertarian concept. If you go ahead and you look up things like System D, right on Wikipedia, and this is something you'll find liberals, talking about the world economy, and they go, and then there's System D. You know what System D is? System D is counter-economics. That's exactly what it is. It's just another word for it.
Well, what you're pointing out here is a problem in information theory. How do you publicize something which is done in secret?
Well, I have to jump in here, guys, and say that there are two really great examples that, in my mind, of people participating in counter-economics openly. And one of them is Mandrick in New Hampshire, who does business without state permission, who's had a history of preparing meals right in Central Square in the center of town, openly selling his and vending his food and cooking it there, of course, without oversight or regulation, but private customers are able to say, do I want this or do I not want this? Do I trust it without an FDA label or not? And the other great example is the Lemonade Freedom Day, which some folks may know. The second annual Lemonade Freedom Day is coming up August 18th in Washington, D.C. But it's a national event where even children can be involved, where they set up a lemonade stand and say, you know what, damn it, there's nothing wrong with me selling lemonade to my neighbors. And no, I don't need the FDA to come and inspect my meals. And no, I don't need to ask permission from the city or the state.
Well, a lot of the history of the free market, and this is why we use the word agora and agorism, is that the agora was, in fact, temporary bazaars where merchants would come in, just on a temporary basis, set up their kiosk or their table or whatever it was, and then they would disappear, before the before the king's soldiers could show up to shut them down.
Well, and one of the things we did this year, I just want to say this again. This is the synergy I'm talking about. One of the things that we did in the New Hampshire House and got it passed into law was we made it so that if you are doing business for products of your own making, you don't have to go get a kitchen license anymore. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can make stuff and sell it yourself, and the state will leave you alone as long as you are a small business. And in this case, we ended up defining it as $10,000.
I hate to interrupt. I hate to interrupt your train of thought here.
Yeah.
Seth, and I think it's a very excellent
Well, I want to come back because the whole point is Derrick mentioned Mandrick, and it's a perfect example. My goal in New Hampshire, working within the system, is to make it so that activists like Mandrick aren't hassled and can continue to grow exactly what J. Neal is talking about.
Right.
This is why I think it's so important that we all work on all fronts, Seth. I think it's wonderful that you're doing what you're doing, even though it's not my bag, and I think I would gag if I had to do stuff like that. But I am so glad and I am so grateful to you for the work that you're doing, because I think we can really work together to promote this freedom lifestyle and mentality in New Hampshire. So thanks.
But if we're going to continue the Derrick J. Freeman strategy here, we need to also develop a strategy of busting people out of jail.
Yeah.
So there are organizations that have self-organized, like the Civil Disobedience Evolution Fund and free agents at fr33agents.com, who specialize in that sort of thing for freedom activists.
There's also a group that I started on Facebook, which is basically a mutual aid group for people who have been busted, or who are having legal problems as of this moment. But one way you can actually do that is through mutual aid, such as Chip-ins, like chipin.org. You can actually do it through another site. I can't remember the name of it at this moment, but you can do it through donations and whatnot.
Do we have the equivalent of the Innocence Project, where instead of showing that people are innocent of felonies through DNA, do we have an organization which concentrates on getting victimless crime prisoners out of prison?
Not that I know of, but
I think we do. I think we do because we have things like groups that are saying don't take the plea. So Derrick, you want to go back to that because you open up your documentary with you handing out don't take the plea flyers. That's one of the first things you did. What was the response when you started handing out don't take the plea flyers?
First of all, about half of the people who come into the courthouse on any given day are victimless crimes. And about half of the people which are crimes involving no victims, about half of the people who come in take the flyer. And I would say it's a small percentage of people who decide not to take the plea deal, and it's difficult to say what impact the flyers themselves have. But we've been activists in Keene have been handing out these flyers every day for over the past year. And so I have to believe that there has been some impact made by the dedicated activists who are handing these out and getting the message out there that, hey, you haven't done anything wrong. In fact, I take objection with the way Todd phrased the way people are getting busted, and I have to be a prick and point that out and say, these people aren't getting busted because that implies that they've done something wrong. These people haven't done anything wrong.
That's not what I mean.
I know that's not what you're saying, but I think the words are important. And so, when we use terms like they got busted, it really sets the activists in a bad light. Like they have been.
Then let's flip the terminology from victimless crimes to crimeless victims.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The state makes victims out of people who commit victimless crimes.
Well, so Derrick, what things did you do that you got hassled for that are documented in your documentary? I mean, what you just give a quick list. What are things that really everybody go, that wasn't a crime? Why did he get bothered for it?
One was having a dance party. I had a dance party in the center of town, and for that I was handcuffed, walked over to a police cruiser, and pepper sprayed. And
I want to show that. And I want to play this clip of the dance party here. Before we do here, my partner in crime, Jim, do you have any comments or questions for Derrick?
Well, I'm just happy that you're not in jail.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, it is good to be free. And just to set up this clip, we were having a dance party. It happened every Friday after an event called Free Speech Friday, in which members of the community would gather together in the center of town to discuss common problems and find common solutions that didn't involve the state. And the government people really didn't like this sort of thing happening because they prefer you to do it on their terms, at their time, at their city council meetings, which are often very inconvenient for people to attend, and they're boring. This was a more self-organized situation.
Right.
And we decided to have a dance party later on in the night afterwards.
Right, and this is the clip here. It's a 1 minute and 39.9 second clip here. Here it is.
Eventually, one officer, Michael Kopcha, attempted to take the property for which I was responsible.
Hey!
I held my property to protect it from theft.
Whoa. Hey! Leave him alone, man! He's not doing fucking anything to you, man! Hey! Hey! Is this the answer? Sir, let go of the bag! Get your fucking hands off him! He's not fucking doing anything! This is my property! Yeah, you have no right to take that! You have fucking no right!
Put the mouse's word and then put this man into the
That's
ground?
correct! That's correct!
No, these guys don't even know who did that. What kind of you said? Putting people to the ground, trying to take their property?
Exactly. I don't know that it's his property, man.
You know this the other guy's property and he's going to put it into the ground?
Information I'm working on right now.
So, yes, you can see the video where he tugs at my arms and he's saying, let go of the bag, and it's right on video. I'm not holding the bag, but he's ripping my arm behind my back anyway. Walks me over to the police car, says, get in the car. And I say, I don't want to get in the car. He said, get in the car. And I say, I feel like I'm being kidnapped. I don't want to get in this car. And so I stand there, and he says, well, then I'm going to mace you. And he does. Even after the mace, I was remaining standing, and because I did not want to come in. I'll walk home after being maced. I would much rather, but no, he then just pushed my shoulders in because I couldn't see anything. And I'm in pain. My whole head's on fire at this point.
So, that was fucking intense, Derrick. I mean, I mean, exactly what was the attitude of the other officers when he was putting or actually throwing you into that car so that he could drive you up to that police station and throw you into a cage because you wouldn't let go of your property, and he was trying to take that property away from you?
It was really bizarre, Todd, and thanks for asking. You know, the way the other officers were acting, it can be indicative of what sort of police force this town runs. But they really just trusted that Officer Kopcha, the man who was arresting me and pepper sprayed me, they just trusted that he was, you know, acting within the law, which I, of course, say that he was not, because he was participating in theft at the time of my arrest. And he wasn't protecting or serving anybody. You know, these police were totally unwelcome at this dance party we were having, and we had the dance party before and were left unmolested. When the police showed up, they said they would leave when the lights and music were off. However, at the time they said that, the lights and music were off. So it was clear to me that they came to start trouble. They act just like any gang. And I was charged with 3 victimless crimes that night. One was obstructing government administration for the crime of holding on to my property and protecting it from theft. The second was for resisting arrest, where I say, I don't want to get in the car.
Right.
And the third happened at the police station, where I refused to process because I said, I don't believe I've committed a crime. I'm not saying anything until I've spoken with a lawyer. And for that, they said that I was being charged with the crime of refusing to process, which is not a crime in New Hampshire, only in Keene. It's a town ordinance. So I was facing 3 years and over $2,000 in fines for that night alone. And it was
Derrick, for the clarification of those who don't know Keene, from the town square that you were having the party in to where you were taken to be processed is how far away?
Less than a mile, I would say.
Less than a mile.
It's probably a 20-minute walk, so maybe just a mile.
So they went ahead and by forcing you into the car and pepper spraying you and then making that into a crime, that's kidnapping. That's one of the things that the Keene folks are saying is these people are thugs. They're kidnapping us.
Derrick, there seems to be a certain amount of ambiguity in the way you're approaching this. Because, in fact, it's 2 different perspectives here. The libertarian perspective is that these police are, in fact, criminals, and the statist perspective is that you are a criminal. There's basically a definitional ambiguity going on where you have 2 different sides who are each seeing the other as criminal. That, you know, brought to fruition, that's called revolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I actually wrote a thing that was in the statewide paper specifically about the occupiers because they, like in many other places around the country, they pushed the occupiers out of the park where they were gathering, and I said, when you shut down this public assembly, which is a fundamental constitutional right, you are leaving no choice but revolution. And I believe that's what we're headed toward. I really do.
Well, I believe that, you know, when throwing the term around revolution, I like to encourage the use of the term evolution just as much because it implies that there's peace, whereas revolutions throughout history have been violent. I think that there's much more that can be accomplished when people use a video camera and act in a peaceful way when dealing with these thugs.
Yes, but you see, that's a unilateral peace because one side is willing to use violence.
Well, and how many times have they taken cameras away, Derrick? I mean, that's the other thing. You're saying the camera is the friend of peace because you're exposing, using sunlight to try to solve the problems. And what has the courts and the cops done when you've attempted to video document things?
Well, yeah. Oftentimes they'll take it away. As you know from watching the documentary, I was arrested once for disorderly conduct for the crime of filming in the courthouse, and I was also chased on foot and arrested for filming outside the courthouse.
Right, which I think was a bullshit thing they tried to pull on you. And I remember seeing that in your documentary over, you know, they were telling the other the other activists in the courthouse to turn off the camera. We don't want any filming.
May I lend my highest praise at this point, Derrick, because what is amazing about your documentary, why I think everybody needs to go to YouTube and watch it, is that there are so many cases where they are telling you to turn off your camera, where they're taking away the camera, and you still have the video. In other words, there are so many of these cases. I myself experienced a case when I was filming my movie Lady Magdalene's, where we were trying to film on a Sunday during off hours outside an FBI building, and because we stepped into their parking lot, they demanded the media that we were filming on, and when it came back, they'd erased it. I'm amazed at how much did not get erased from confiscated media.
Well, a lot of it is due to the quick hands of activists who took the cameras before the police were able to. It's so often the government people tell me and others to turn off the camera. And Dave Ridley of the Ridley Report approached me about a couple of different strategies for dealing with that situation. It can be very difficult for someone who's new to these types of encounters. One strategy that he recommends is complying but slowly. And so saying, okay, I'm turning off the camera now, and walking away slowly as you're doing it, so that they know that you're complying with their order, but you still get the important video that you need. It still drives the point home that they have told you to turn off the camera and that it's under the threat of the law, that they'll use violence and force against you if you don't, but you still get to keep your video if you comply with them. It's a little more risky if you openly disobey and say, no, I'm going to continue filming you. You can arrest me if you want, if you must.
Right. And
I recommend
this is
people comply slowly.
Right.
And I should mention that there is a case law building up which is defending the right of photography and videography on public places.
That's the Glick decision, which is in the First Circuit Court, which is the court that covers New Hampshire. And one of the things that we have found is that essentially the police were ignoring it, despite the fact this decision was out there. But they have learned their lesson now. They now have all been told, these people have a right to film. You better not violate their rights because they will sue you. And there actually are some pending lawsuits here in New Hampshire, right? Because we have lawyers who are willing to challenge.
In federal court, there is federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 242, which essentially that if somebody is using the color of law to violate somebody's constitutional rights, they can be held personally liable, which means that if they want to defend themselves in court from violating your rights, they have to sell their house, borrow against their pension, and they can't use taxpayer funds to defend themselves.
Well, whether you work inside the system or outside the system, and regardless of the law, the camera, I believe, is the number one tool of the liberty activists.
It is
to keep
the
objective
biggest
record
enemy.
of what's happening.
Let me put it this way, Derrick. The camera, the video camera, your handy cam, is the biggest enemy of the state. It is the biggest weapon against the state.
And may I point out that even an Android Razr phone at this point will shoot 1080p video.
That's correct. And what's really interesting about this is that, it's easy for these bureaucrats and these thugs, dressed in suits, can actually just unilaterally and multilaterally just toss the Constitution aside and say, well, we don't want filming in the courtrooms, we don't want filming here, and blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something, asshole. The Constitution demands open courts, transparent courts. The Bill of Rights demand it. If you cannot acknowledge that the Bill of Rights supersede anything that your ridiculous law says because it demands transparency in the courtrooms, in the courthouses, then you have no business serving the public trust, as far as I'm concerned.
That is absolutely true. But let me point out the difference between the agorist non-confrontational approach and Derrick's confrontational approach, because there are cameras so small at this point that they shoot they shoot video quite well without being detectable. And in fact, if you can get that video out and anonymously upload it to through an anonymous server or something like that, you've basically accomplished the goal of getting the video out without placing yourself at risk.
And actually, Derrick uses that technique in the film, because I remember one spot, the hat incident, Derrick.
Yes.
You want to talk about that for a second? That's a great moment.
Yeah, that was a great moment about it.
Sure. You're talking about small cameras. The camera I was using that day is smaller than my thumb. And so I was walking out of the district courthouse after Bo actually had court for a false, trumped-up possession of drug charges. And so I was leaving after having filmed, and I had permission to film that day. And as I was walking out, I am putting a hat on. I kept my personal camera rolling, this one that is smaller than my thumb. And as I'm walking out, one of the bailiffs, Ron Dusevich, a man who had previously arrested me for filming in the courthouse lobby, again attacks me with, using his hands to keep my body from being able to leave the building. And his intention, as he states, is for me to remove my hat. He will not allow me to leave the building until I remove my hat. And this is insane. He acts as if he is going to arrest me for the crime of wearing a hat. Why didn't you tell him you were Jewish? Well, I'm not one to lie. That's the thing is I know that it would be so easy to get what I want from the world of the state if I were willing to compromise my principles. Well, I mean, but I don't want to live in that.
Is lying to a criminal really a moral offense? I mean, let's think about this. You know, if a thief says, "Give me all your money," and you tell the thief, "I don't have any money," is there a moral crime there? Derrick, I need an answer.
I believe that it is, because I don't want to give the criminal the power over me to compromise what I know to be true and good, and telling the truth is true and good. And so I believe that deception, when you are defending yourself from a criminal, you do not need to tell the Nazi that you have gold in your teeth. You don't need to tell the thief that you're carrying a wallet. If these people are criminals, there is no moral offense. Remember, even going back to the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments is about bearing false witness against somebody else committing a crime. It's not talking about defending yourself from a criminal.
But Jania, while you're right, I think that works against putting it on film, because, and Derrick, I think you can back me up here, that there are times Derrick has done stuff where the full video actually caused people to be upset, where they said, well, but you were instigating some of this. So having the moral high ground sometimes is your only defense when you're putting it out there. That lying on film, even if you're right, might actually work against the cause of liberty.
I see your point, but I see it as a tactical question, not a moral question.
Well, okay, so Derrick, you want to talk about the crossing guard? So you got a little clip. You've got a little clip in that thing where she goes ahead and strikes you, but that's an excerpt from a bigger thing, and you guys had some controversy over that, didn't you?
It's a perfect example of one of the most divisive parts of my activism. It was completely unintentional, but yes, it was. I was participating in some outreach at a high school, and this is something that I did on a weekly basis at different high schools in the area, until, of course, I was banned from all of them. But I was handing out literature to young people about freedom, and that particular day, I wasn't even handing out literature. I was documenting the event by walking around with a video camera. I happened to be getting some B-roll, just some video to put behind my voice so that I could make a short video and explain what we were doing, and I was filming a crossing guard. She turns to me and proceeds to hit me with her sign as she shouts and explains that she doesn't want to be on camera. I calmly explained to her that she's in public, she is a public servant, and that I'm not going to turn off the camera.
You want to know something, Derrick? When I was watching that entire clip, while I was watching that documentary, I was actually saying this out loud to myself. And this is true, by the way. I was saying, what's the matter, lady? You didn't get your Social Security check this month? I mean, this lady just actually she was freaking out.
You know, that was very telling, and because what it's bringing out is the principle of statism today. And let me point out exactly what that principle is. Statists demand absolute clandestine secrecy for everything that they want to do, and then they demand total transparency from people who are not officials. And that is the exact definition of tyranny. When the government demands secrecy and then demands transparency from us. In fact,
and we need to flip that 180 degrees. I completely agree with you.
The reverse is a free society in which anyone in government has absolute transparency, and citizens are the only ones who are allowed privacy.
Well, a lot of people want to make exceptions for little old ladies because they're not where the rubber meets the road. Crossing guards aren't the problem with the state, you know, and I acknowledge that crossing guards aren't the crux of the problem. They aren't the reason that I am not free. But I still want to be consistent, and that's why I'm unapologetic about keeping that video and putting it online, because, no, just because someone is a little old lady doesn't put them above transparency. I think that if you're doing something and wearing a badge, then you're going to be on camera.
I think what you're driving at here, Eric, I'm sorry, Derrick. I think what you're driving here is that they're not above the law. And
right.
At the same time,
people talk about anarchists as if they don't believe in the law. And I would say that anarchists know that in the world of the state, the first law is there is no law. They can do whatever they want.
And that's why your documentary is such a valuable, excuse me for being redundant, document. Because what you are documenting in your documentary, in a redundant phrasing, is it is in fact this attitude of those who are in official capacity who act, who commit crimes under color of law.
And what that really means is under threat of violence.
Yes.
Right. Now, let me ask you something, Derrick. You did say that you are on a self-imposed exile from New Hampshire. You're at an undisclosed location right now at this point in Philadelphia. What made you decide to go on that kind of excursion? Was it to, what was the principal thinking behind that? I mean, what basically pushed you into that direction?
Well, thanks for asking, Todd. There was a lot of factors. Of course, it was very difficult for me to decide to leave New Hampshire. It is the place that I now call home. I've made a lot of very close friends and business relationships there, and so leaving New Hampshire was very difficult. But it was a decision that I made because part of my sentence is still yet unserved. I have a stayed sentence, which means that I served part of it, and that upon the condition of obedient behavior and following the laws or not getting caught breaking laws, perhaps might be a better way to put it, I am facing 900 more days in prison, and that would be imposed on me if I were to commit another jailable offense. And so I don't feel safe hanging around in that state where I have such a history of arrest. I haven't been arrested in any other state. I hadn't been arrested before moving to New Hampshire, in fact.
Well, Derrick, may I recommend to you that you might find yourself quite comfortable and amenable here in Pahrump, Nevada.
Well, Nevada is certainly going to be one of my stops on the Exile tour. So what I'm doing in order to avoid being arrested is filming other people's activism. And so I'm going on tour. Folks can follow my journey at libertyontour.com. I'm reviving the old...
You should come to Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
You should come to Michigan. I'm in the Metro Detroit area. I'll be doing some activism there as far as, the upcoming rallies. Like, I think there's going to be some, I think there's going to be some upcoming Ron Paul and other oriented pro-freedom stuff, in the works here as well. And, there isn't a super big pro-freedom movement in my area as much because we're all spread thin out. And let's
we can
face
fix that.
it.
We can fix that for you, Todd. You just have to move to New Hampshire and join the rest of us, because New Hampshire is the new libertarian Zion. I'm telling people that this is the new libertarian homeland.
I got to speak up for my hometown. Pahrump, Nevada is the new libertarian Zion.
No.
Is there anything in libertarianism that says there can only be one libertarian Zion?
Certainly, you can claim anything you want, but you're going to be a heretic. You're going to be a heretic because
I have to jump in here, guys, and say, I moved from a city of 1.5 million people, where activism wasn't happening, to a city with 20,000 people, and there's activism every day, too much to participate in for just one person. So I gotta tell you guys that for most of the presidential election, the only signs you saw for president in Pahrump were for Ron Paul. You never saw a sign for anybody else.
Right.
I might be a little controversial in saying so, but I don't think Ron Paul is really the answer.
Well, of course, Ron Paul would tell you he's not the answer. Ron Paul was in it basically to inject libertarian ideas into a media that will only cover politics.
Right, and it's a state solution. I don't want, my freedom to come by some imposed leader. If people aren't, it's just as wrong for Ron Paul to tell people that the Fed shouldn't exist as it is for Obama to say that it should exist. I think what's
I think that's getting. I think that equivocation doesn't quite work. The negation of an evil is not itself evil.
Well, imposing will onto others, when they may not want it. I would say what's better than getting rid of the Fed is dealing in Bitcoin. Personally,
we don't need to get rid of the Fed. The Fed is doing quite a good job of getting rid of itself.
Well, while that's true, I still think that an individual's choice to either use Federal Reserve notes or not is the solution, and it's always the solution, is individuals making choices.
And Ron Paul would not ask for anything else other than not having fiat laws which require us to use it.
Well, Derrick, when you do come to Michigan, I don't know when you will, but we should meet up, and I should do like a documentary thing on you, or some kind of an interview thing, or what have you, and we can do a lot of pit stops along, what's going on with the freedom, the various areas here in Michigan where there's some freedom activity.
If you don't mind my making the observation, it used to be said years ago that a typical libertarian conference was libertarians selling their libertarian books to each other. Nowadays, it's libertarian documentaries featuring each other in our documentaries.
That's the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing about New Hampshire, though, is I want to give a shout out to Bo for editing this documentary so amazingly well.
I have no idea where he's at. I mean,
I had seen a lot of this footage, the stuff that had gone online from the various pieces over it's roughly about a year, right, Derrick? It's a little over a year's worth of activity.
Yep. Exactly.
And I had seen a lot of that because one of the things I do is I pay attention to what else is going on in New Hampshire, especially being a state rep and wanting to know what my fellow Free Staters are up to. And so I was well aware of a lot of these pieces. But the way this documentary is put together, I absolutely have to give a shout-out to Bo. I have to give a shout-out to you, Derrick, for your commentary over the whole thing. You put together a year's worth of activity into an hour and a half that is entertaining and informative. And I just want to give both of you just, absolute 2 thumbs up. Great job.
Hey, Derrick, can I ask a filmmaker question here? I know that you've got it on YouTube where anybody can see it, but that doesn't preclude you from taking it to film festivals, does it?
Certainly not. I will be showcasing this at film festivals across the country. I'll also be showing it while I'm traveling in different cities. I'll be screening it. And there's going to be another version that's going to be released that will be available on Netflix and Hulu. We just have to clean up some of the music because Netflix and Hulu are not as progressive when it comes to intellectual property.
Intellectual property. Don't get J-Neil and I arguing over that one. And it is available on BitTorrent, correct?
But
it is available on BitTorrent, correct, Derek? So if someone wants to download a high-def version, they can go watch it. They don't have to wait for
but I think what Derek and I know as filmmakers is there are so many talented libertarian musicians there. There is no lack of resources for music.
That's right, and we have already contracted with one such Liberty music producer, and so he's going to be producing some really nice hip-hop beats to go behind the entire documentary, and we'll be including some other things. But thank you for mentioning, yes, it is available on BitTorrent. It's also on the Pirate Bay, pretty much anywhere where you can look for it. It's available. Victimlesscrimespree.com is the best resource for folks to find it.
Let me ask you about a couple more questions, and we're going to have to end it here, Derek. But one question here is your project going to be available on DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that? I assume that was filmed in HD, so it's going to be probably available if people want, say, a DVD copy of it. Are you going to be doing that and selling it at a price you think that's good, or is this just going to be only available for free?
There's the free version, which is finished and available at victimlesscrimespree.com. Folks can download that and make DVDs on their own if they wish. But the DVD version will be the cleaned up Netflix and Hulu approved version that will have cleaner audio in terms of intellectual property. We'll actually own the rights to those. And
but if someone wanted to take the high-def copy that's available on BitTorrent, burn it onto DVDs, and sell it in the Agora, they could, correct?
Absolutely, and I encourage them to do that. I hope they make boatloads of money doing it. I'm not asking for a dime. I just want the message to get out there.
Well, while Derek may be too open source to ask for a dime, let me point out that to the viewership out there, that giving money back to filmmakers does help finance their next film, and we do want that to happen.
And there is a chip-in for your Victimless Crime Spree, isn't that correct, Derek?
Yeah, folks are able to chip in. Again, I recommend just going through victimlesscrimespree.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page. It will give a blurb about my Exile Tour, and folks can help fund the Exile Tour and the stops along the way and help me produce these daily videos by donating there at victimlesscrimespree.com. Right. And the DVD, by the way, should be coming out in a month and will be loaded with extra features, interviews, especially from haters. People who hate me will be on the DVD. And so I think folks will be very interested to see that.
Wow, haters! That would be a sight to see.
Hey, if you don't mind making a networking thing right here, Derek, because you are, as well as being a libertarian activist, also a gay activist, I have a reality TV idea I want to talk to you sometime later about.
Oh, great. Well, certainly. Feel free to give me a call. My contact information is at DerrickJFreeman.com.
Excellent.
Oh, cool. My partner in crime and co-host, Jim Landrith Jr., you've got any other comments or questions for Derek before he goes?
Well, I'll just say hope you can stay free for a little while longer. Keep fighting, and, just don't ever let them shut you up.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's very good to speak with you all. Todd, Jay, Neil Shulman, Jim, and Seth, it's been a pleasure. Victimlesscrimespree.com is the website.
One final question, and I'll let you go here, Derek.
Certainly.
What is the what do you hope? Where do you see yourself in the next few years as far as within the Liberty movement? Are you going to be able to return to New Hampshire? Are you going to be making more documentaries? I mean, what hope do you see for yourself and for the entire Liberty movement itself?
It's impossible to say where I'll be in a few years, what with the unpredictability of working with the state. But if my ideal world came true, I would be producing a documentary of this sort every year based on the videos that I produce throughout the year. And I'll be back on Free Talk Live, living in Keene, again when my sentence is no longer hanging over my head.
Derrick, thank you so much for being on the air with us. You're awesome. You're more than welcome to distribute this interview with you as much as you like. And also, you and I, you're always welcome to, be a panelist on the show in the future whenever you feel like it. The offer's available to you. Good luck, my friend, and keep up the work you've been doing. Keep fighting the good fight, no matter what.
Thank you so much. Sincerely a pleasure. Peace and liberty, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.